fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. This is going to be a fun episode. We have a friend, fellow comrade, insider member named Pat Ogletree. About a year ago, the guy throws out something kind of wild in the community, says he's going to fish only topwater lures, and he's a very active fisherman for an entire year. And we were like, that's crazy. But at the same point, I was excited because I've seen what it's done for Luke. I've learned a ton just watching some other people basically become specialists or experts at a particular lure or type of lure. And the year is now up. And Pat sent us over this Word doc. I don't know. How many words is this sucker, Pat? Like thousands?
It was 4,500.
Okay, 4,500. It was thousands.
Yeah, literally looking at it was 4,454 words. It's very impressive, and it's amazing resource. It's awesome.
Yeah, and some really, really interesting intel. Some stuff that I think is going to shock you if you have used topwater lures, which I'm guessing you have if you're watching this. And we're going to talk about all the different types. We're going to talk about color. Does it really matter? Some interesting types in terms of chuggers and poppers and ploppers and wake baits. What are the other ones? Prop baits. And some kind of unique ones as well that I've seen on shelves but I've never actually purchased. But I guess if you're going to go a whole year of topwater only, you kind of have to buy everything and try everything. And it sounds like you learned a lot. And so first and foremost, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And so this started a year ago, and it was right when we saw you at our insider party, right, in January?
Yeah, I had come up with the idea the year before that, December, that I wanted to get good at topwater. So I decided the best way to do this is just go full in. And we're going to do it for 365 days and see what happens. And of course, that day that we met at E.G. Simmons, that was when a massive cold front had come through, and which is the absolute worst time to start fishing topwater. But hey, if you're going to learn, you gotta fish through all the situations.
Yeah,
so how many different outings do you think you've had all said and done this past year?
It's hard to say. I usually fish on Sundays, so there's 50 there, and then who knows how many times I snuck out to the golf course and tried something new each time. So given that, I would probably say it's 7,500 times probably.
And not once did you cheat. Not once did you go to a jerk shad or a paddle tail.
No, the only way that I could keep from doing that is I literally took everything out of my kayak. And I only brought this with me, this one box. That's all I fished out of for 1 year. So even though I might wanted to have to cheat, I had no option. That's just what I had to work with.
Dang, that's impressive.
It's pure dedication.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's really that's the only way to get good at something too. As because I did the same thing for jerk baits back when I really started learning saltwater fishing. And it makes you you will eventually learn the modifications to a retrieve to get fish to strike on a tough day or when the situations don't arise. Like topwater, I think is the ultimate challenge because there's many situations where it's really, really tough to get a topwater bite.
Yeah. And
like that day I remember you mentioned it, and then that cold front came in. And I was like, there's no way he's going to throw all topwaters all day. And sure enough, you did. And the fact that you stuck through it the whole year is remarkable.
Yeah, it's amazing how stubborn I am, but I think it's more the reason why I bought the just the one tackle box and I had to not bring anything else was just lack of willpower. I know I probably would have leaned if I'd have brought something else. But yeah, it's like you said, it's the best way to get good at something.
So how many different types of topwaters did you try?
Wow, that's a pretty big question. There's a lot of different types. I would say if they made it, I probably tried it, and unless it was some really oddball stuff. I've got soft plastics, I've got walkers, I've got chug baits, I've got wake baits, subsurface floater divers. Tried a little bit of everything, even like the bullfrog that Luke likes to use. I tried those, and those Savage Gear setups that you've seen that they look like ducks and spiders and turtles, and I even threw those. You never know until you try.
Did you ever look with those like a duck or anything? I still haven't tried anything, any of those. Any success?
No, to be honest with you, I've tried it, and I think they probably work under certain situations, but I just didn't run across those situations. I think you really have to find a highly aggressive bite and something in just the right scenario where they're not really being picky about what they're eating. They're just hitting at anything that moves. But it was more the traditional baits that work best for me.
Too cool. All right, so where do we start on this thing? My goodness, 4,500 words. So it's
seasonality. I thought that was a good breakout. You broke out by season and type.
Let's do that because that's very valuable.
Okay, so seasons. Let's start with there. Since I started this in January, we were just we're in the middle of the winter. Historically, the worst time to throw topwaters. Although there are times you can catch them on topwater, just the winter time is not. This is really kind of the time you put them away and start working your subsurface stuff. So what I typically did with that time was I was just finding out equipment issues because although with topwater you can use your normal inshore tackle, it doesn't take special tackle. It doesn't take the lightweight setups and the special reels because you're going to see the strike and you don't necessarily have to feel the strike. But I did notice with certain rods, they didn't work as well working the lures as others. So that's when I was dialing in. That's when I was realizing that you have to use a mono leader. If you use fluoro, you're going to get tangled up with the hooks, a lot more than you will with mono. That's when I found out that I prefer bait casters over spinners. Not saying that spinning reels don't work. My preference is with a bait caster. The 7/6 rods didn't work for me because it's typically a point down, a rod tip down. I'm short. I'm fishing out of a kayak, so I was slapping the water a lot. So I prefer a shorter rod in the 6 to 7 foot range. So that's what I spent a lot of that time in January. The one thing that I did discover, say January to early February. The one time that you can catch on topwater is days much like today, where you had a cold front come through on the weekends, and then you're on a warming trend. So once that water warms up, the fish move into the shallow water, and right like today, right when we got a next cold front lining up, the wind picks up. So the fish aren't going to be as spooky as they are on a dead calm day. So this would be a day, maybe tomorrow, just before the cold front arrives, that you could catch them on topwater. But as soon as that cold front arrives, time to put them away and start using something else.
Unless you've forced yourself to only fish topwater for an entire.
Yeah, and then you start working on your gear some more and fine tuning that. But my going back to that, I did follow in my favorite setup that I have now is I've got a Falcon 6.8. It's a coastal. It's a medium heavy and a moderate action. And I prefer moderate fast. Sorry. I prefer the moderate fast over a fast action because it has a little bit more give. And with a hard plug, when the fish starts shaking its head and it starts jumping, it acts, as a weight to help throw that hook out. So I've noticed my hookups and the actual catch, actually getting into the kayak was a lot less with the fast action rod. When I switched over to that moderate fast action, it acted more of like a spring, and it was a little bit of a give, so they stayed buttoned better. And that has really been my go-to. As a matter of fact, even with it all set and over, that I'm going to use that for topwater only. I'm probably not going to throw anything else with that rod except that. And it's a bait caster with 30-pound braid. I use Berkeley big game for my leader material and a 30-pound. And typically, I'm not using any more than maybe 12 inches a leader. You don't need a whole lot of leader material. And tying a non-slip loop knot on pretty much all my top waters.
Yeah, and as far as you're fishing out of a kayak, and are you standing up when retrieving? As like you said, you're slapping the water, or are you sitting down and just doing like the rod to the side, or are you standing up and doing the rod down, or both?
No, standing up for the most part. The only time that I'll sit down is if it's windy and the wind is pushing me too fast. You know, your body will act like a sail and catch that wind. Then I'll sit down. But you know, I'm lucky enough to have a Hobie that's a pedal drive, and that can actually, you know, I can position myself and kind of use it like a trolling motor or like a spot lock kind of if I'm fishing in areas. So that time I'll sit down. But I would say most of the time I'm standing up.
Got it. Tony, that's the same for you when you're out kayak fishing, top water, it's standing up, I presume?
Yeah, pretty much all the fishing I do is standing up just so I can see better, and I'll stand up and paddle. And I'm usually too shallow that the fins work. I have the same Hobie as well. But if I'm a little deeper and it's ripping, then yeah, I'll push myself out a little further and cast towards the shore or whatever structure I'm trying to target, just so I can control myself better.
And Pat, any situation where you're doing a rod up retrieve, just out of curiosity, I feel myself always doing rod down, but I'm wondering, is there a situation where rod up is a benefit?
Wake baits. When you're throwing a wake bait, you're going to keep rod up. That way you can keep the bait closer to the surface. And if you have to vary your retrieve, say you want to pick up the retrieve, it'll keep it up further. If you feel like that it's necessary to get the bait down, then you can lower your rod tip down. But yeah, pretty much the only thing I'm going to do rod tip up is a wake bait.
And trebles or singles? Are you keeping it standard trebles, or you replace it with singles, or some of each?
So what I'm doing is I am replacing with singles. I believe even if you're fishing for dinner, you should probably switch to inline singles, just because you're going to catch shorts. And those shorts need to go back. And the trebles, I tried to keep them on there, and I was just causing a lot of damage to the smaller fish that I was catching. I didn't feel right about it, so I did switch to the inline singles. But what I've noticed when I first switched them out was the lure will sit higher in the water column when you switch to a lighter hook. So I had to play around with the weight. So what I did was I moved up bigger size hooks, and I've also moved up and heavier gauge hooks, so I can equal out the weight of the trebles. What I actually did was I bought a kitchen scale from Amazon, and I would weigh the hooks that I would take off and try to find a single that would equal the weight but not be so large that would wrap the line around the front of it. And then I got to the idea that I liked the walkers and the prop baits having a heavier hook in the back to get that back down a little bit. And the reason why I do that is when it gets windy out and the waves are really choppy, I like to work the bait really hard. And it's not just like a standard, like a twitch. It's really hard. You're trying to bring as much attention to that lure as possible. And with the back of the lure sitting lower in the water, you could do that better. And that seems to work out for me. And even if you're not working it harder, when the back is sitting lower in the water, it doesn't move as far forward. So you could, in a slower situation, you could almost keep the lure in the same spot and just twitch it back and forth. So there are some advantage to that. The advantage to having the lighter hooks that will cause the bait to sit higher in the water is if you're fishing for aggressive fish, really actively feeding fish, trout and snook, you can work it faster and cover more water that way. But I found that it benefits me better to have it sitting lower in the water column.
Pretty cool.
What brand of inline hooks did you find that are that thick that compared to the trebles? Is it like the owner, like the 2X, or are we going BMC or Mustad?
So depends on the size of the lure that you're using. Like a smaller, like say a Spook Junior, what I've done is I'll use the owner 1X on the front, and then I'll use a VMC 3X or a 4X in the back, and I'll go up one size. So say it'll be a 1/0 1X in the front. It could be a 3X in the rear. And it doesn't, and on a plastic bait, it doesn't take that much difference to get that back end down. Now, wooden bait, I've tried. Those wooden baits, really, they're pretty buoyant. So you have to really, it has to be a really big difference in the weight. And I really don't, I don't mess with the wooden baits too much, but the plastic baits, definitely.
Cool. You mentioned mono over fluoro. Get it? And can you explain why? What about bait casters versus spinning? You said you preferred the casting over the spinning, but what was the main reason?
I've got a bad shoulder, and the bait caster, I can hold it closer to my body and lower, and it's just easier for me. I like the pickup speed on a bait caster when you're working a hard plug. And I know Luke has been saying that he's liking the bait casters on dock fishing. It seems to get the fish out quicker. And if you think about it, the reason why is a lot of people are looking at the lines per inch on the return. Spinning reels might have more of a lines per inch on return, but if you look at a baitcaster reel, the handle's smaller diameter, so you can get more RPMs. So you can actually probably pick up more line with that baitcaster than you can a spinning reel. And, if you think about it, what does a truck winch look like? Looks like a baitcaster, doesn't look like a spinning reel.
Well, good point. What you mentioned the Falcon rod. What's been your favorite reel for Topwater so far?
I've tried a bunch of them. At the beginning of the year, I had purchased 3 different of the 13 fishing or 1-3 fishing. I'm not sure exactly how it's said. A entry level, a medium, and a high end one. I can honestly say they're not as durable as the Lew's that I have. I have a Lew's that I treat like a work truck. I mean, I haven't serviced this thing in 3 years. I hose it off with fresh water and put it back into service the next week, and it just keeps on chugging along. So when I go to replace these 13 fishings, I'll probably buy the Lew's. I really like those reels.
Which model in particular? Out of curiosity, I'm looking to get probably get number 2 here pretty soon.
The MB Tournament. That's the one that I'm using. I think it's in the 150 price range, and you can get it in 3 different gear ratios. I stick with it. I think the 7.0. I think the 8's too fast, and the 6.8 I think is what it is too slow. So I think that 7.0 is the sweet spot.
Tony, are you doing much bait casting now, or did you go pretty much all over to spinning?
No, I'm still using spinning. I have 2 of the 13 fishing reels that I take out every now and then, but my preference is still spinning. But I think it's just a matter of doing what Pat did with Topwaters, is just go out with bait casters and get used to them. Biggest issue for me is just dialing them in with the right lure.
Yeah, it's a lot tougher because as soon as you change a lure, whether it has a different weight or a different wind profile, as far as catching the wind versus not catching the wind, it can be a huge mess. Whereas spinning, you just throw another lure on and sling it, and you don't have to worry about those birds' nests. So I'm still kind of going back and forth. I'm using more spinning than bait casting, but for that dock fisting, I definitely like in bait caster, and for Topwater, I need to try that out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we can all agree we started going down the seasonal path that winter is a tough time. And unless you have made a pledge to your entire fishing family and all your insider members that you're going to do it for a year, you might just want to skip Topwaters during the winter. So into spring, though, different story. What did you find in this?
Absolutely.
Probably when it started getting pretty fun for you to be doing this.
Yeah, it was actually fun catching fish again. It was good. What happens in the springtime is you'll see the bait fish starting to emerge, and over here on the East Coast, we get kind of a secondary bait fish run. It's like the spring bait run. We all heard of the fall mullet run. In the springtime, what happens is all these bait fish will flow out of these creeks, and they'll congregate at the mouth of them. And sometimes you'll just get them so thick that it is, you can almost walk on the water without getting your shoes wet. And those times are great because all the predators come around. But the issue with that, with a lot of times, is getting your bait noticed because there's just so much commotion going on. And that's when these topwaters shine, particularly these prop baits. I'll show you the one that I like to use. This one is made by High Roller. It's called a Rip Roller. It's a 3.5 inch. I think it's a 3/8 ounce. This thing is phenomenal. I was using the skitter walk because what I like to do, I start out with a smaller lure, and this is totally by accident. I kind of realized why it was working is in the springtime, the bait fish are smaller, so you want to throw a smaller lure, kind of match the profile. And also you want to match the sound of the lure. I think the rattle is very important. We'll talk more about that later. But what I noticed, I was using the skitter walk, the small one, the SW08, which is this one here. And I was catching quite a bit of trout, doing really well with it. But then I saw this prop bait and I was like, well, let me try that out just, because I bought it, might as well use it. And man, that thing started catching all the bigger trout. And I've caught tons of trout over 20 inches with that one. So the skitter walk was catching the smaller ones, the 15, 16 inch ones, or the skaters, the ones you reel across the top of the water. But the prop bait was catching the ones that, they're pulling drag, and that's a good trout. And that was by accident finding that one. And that was a good find.
What do you think the reason for that is? That's interesting. I've rarely used prop baits for saltwater. I don't know if I ever have, actually.
And that's what I think. That's what I think is the issue. A lot of people they stick with the walkers. They think topwater, saltwater, it's a walker lure. Well, the great thing about that prop bait is what it does is it imitates a fleeing fish really well. And when I'm working that lure, and like I said, there's bait fish everywhere, and it's making a lot of noise, a lot of splashing. I'm ripping it really hard, and that prop, when it breaks the surface of the water, it sounds exactly like fleeing bait fish. And I think that just gets attention to the bigger fish, and they can't stand it.
And that's a wood one that you showed up to, so there's no rattles. It's that prop is what's doing all the action and vibration.
Yep. It's just that prop. There's no rattles. It's a solid wooden lure. I did switch out to single end lines on that one. It does come with the treble hooks, but that was a company. It's called High Roller. It's out of Gainesville. Marilure makes one that's called a 5M. It's a twin prop. I would probably take the front prop off and just modify the back one. And the cool thing about these prop baits is you can work them fast and you can work them slow. And with these propellers, you can actually pinch them down. They'll make less noise, or you can expand them up and they'll make more noise. I really didn't mess with that too much. I kept them, basically flat the way that they come. And I would adjust the noise by how hard I would work the lure. And how hard you work the lure is dependent on how thick the bait is. You don't have to make a whole lot of noise if there's not a whole lot of bait. But if there's a ton of bait, then you need to get their attention.
Tony, what's that lure you use that has that big prop that spins around? This is like one prop.
I was just going to say, I've used the Whopper Plopper. That's this one here, and it has a single prop on the back. And I'll have to agree that it does catch big trout. The only trout that I've caught on this have been in that same size range, 20 inches or more.
Did you ever try that one and compare it to the smaller metal props? And one of that, because that one big one compared to the smaller metal ones.
Not too sure.
I haven't tried it.
Yeah, I haven't used the metal props. I just picked this one up one day. It looked interesting. They're mainly advertised for bass fishing. So I was like, let me try it out saltwater, and the trout loved it.
And what about you, Pat? Did you try the plopper?
No, the plopper I didn't try. Like I said, I tried some of the Savage Gear ones, the odd looking ones, but never the Whopper plopper.
So that's fascinating because I'm thinking if I was forced to do that, I'm going to be doing all the surface ones that walking the dog, and but you found that pretty quick. It sounds like that was in your first real kind of season of topwater. Was that like you brought it up first? Is that like your favorite? Like that was kind of like now a go-to?
Yeah, actually with the prop bait, it's very unique. It works great in the spring. Once the summer comes around, you might as well put it away. It really doesn't work that good, and I don't know why. But I think the reason why I found it is because I knew I was going to have to rotate lures out, and I really didn't know, at the beginning of this, I dabbled in topwater. I really didn't know much about it. So I brought 3 rods with me. I would put 3 different lures in it, and then I would rotate those 3 lures out. And then throughout the day, I would even change those lures out. So during the course of the day, I would throw maybe 10 or 12 different lures and just make mental notes of how they worked. And then even within those 10 to 12 different lures that I was throwing, I was retrieving them almost a different cadence every time, so I could figure out what the fish were wanting that particular day.
Too cool.
And so what about time of day? So in the spring season, like early morning twilight, or can the topwater be effective in the middle of the day too? What were your findings there? And was there one type of bait or one type of lure that was better in the morning versus the afternoon?
To be honest with you, I did do a whole lot of afternoon fishing. Topwater kind of holds true for the most part, unless you've got overcast skies or some other situation. It really does shut down in that 10 to 11 o'clock hour, unless you've got some other situations, like the cloudy sky. There's certain situations that'll extend the bite. One being windy conditions, because it breaks up the light penetrating the water. Turbid or murky water, you can fish a little bit longer, and overcast skies you can fish longer. But on your traditional standard days, if I wasn't doing this topwater only, I would probably put the topwater away. Maybe just as soon as that sun clears the tree line, and about 9:30, 10 o'clock, you're pretty much you're best to go to a subsurface lure.
How about pre-sunrise versus I guess darkness versus twilight? I assume you're getting out there early and getting to your spot. I'm curious if that prop bait is better at night, just because it has so much more noise, and then maybe a less noisy one when it starts getting somewhat light out, or did you not see any difference?
No, I didn't really see much of a difference when it came to that. The only thing that was unique really to that prop bait was it seemed to be very seasonal. It worked great in the springtime, but as soon as that water started to warm up and the bait fish kind of dispersed, they weren't in those big schools anymore. They were more widespread. That's when the walkers came in, the spook juniors and that kind of stuff. They just outshined it. But in the springtime, when the bait was thick, that's when that prop bait was really the go-to.
Too cool. You guys want to move into summertime?
Let's do it. I assume that's even earlier, super early starts, I presume.
No, believe it or not, I didn't get out too often before daybreak. Just I'm a solo kayaker. I didn't want to be out by myself. Had I fished with other people, I probably would have. But just something about being out there before daybreak, and as Tony can attest, we got some big lizards out there, and they can sneak up on you. But yeah, I would like to get to my spot right before daybreak. That was my deal. So if I had a 45-minute long paddle, hour-long paddle, I would be on the water before that. But I'm not really fishing. I'm commuting to my spot. So what I noticed really, honestly, it was that gray area time that seemed to be the best. That right at daybreak, that civil twilight kind of, you can't really see color that well, all the way up until the sun broke the clouds. And a lot of times, what happens is when you're fishing, you'll get to your spot, but when the sun's down and you don't have good visibility, you really can't see the pattern of the bait fish. You really don't see. You're just kind of almost blind casting or casting to areas that look like it should hold fish. So really, I preferred with a little bit of light. I can see the bait fish activity. I can see what direction they're going. I can find those pinch points and concentrate on that. So I didn't do a whole lot of like nighttime fishing.
Too cool. So what else, was there any other aha moments in the summer you share with spring, having these prop baits? Anything else that was a big learning lesson for the summertime?
Yeah. I love that prop bait so much. I overused it. I wasn't listening to what the fish were telling me. They didn't like the lure. So then I started going back to the walkers, and sure enough, the day I started throwing the walkers heavy, they started going, they started getting more bites and catching more fish. And And then I started fine tuning. Okay, well, I've got a pattern here. I know these walkers are doing good. So let's see if color makes a difference. So at that point, then I would take, like say 3 Spook Juniors or 3 Scare Bees or whatever of 3 different colors and throw them at the same time. And that's really when it dawned on me, to me, and there's other people out there that might disagree, but I don't think color makes a difference. Not that much of a difference. The most important thing to me, and I thought about this, when I go to pre-plan a trip, the first thing I look at is wind direction. One, because I'm fishing in a kayak, and now that I'm fishing with topwater, I understand that the windier the condition, the noisier the lure you need to make, because all the waves and the commotion and all that makes noise. So you have to draw the attention to your lure. So in the summertime, I'm probably going to start out with a Spook Junior. That was a really great lure for me. But if the wind's forecasted below 10 plus, and that's the shoreline that I'm going to fish, I'm probably going to start with something with a high frequency rattle, like a mirror lure sheep pup, or maybe even a she dog if it's going to be really bumpy out there. Those are just noisier lures, so they bring more attention to it. So in the summertime, I discovered the walkers were the way to go. To me, the color didn't matter, and the sound of the rattle was more important to me than the color of the lure. And that pretty much held true all the way through fall. That's when you saw your next really transition with the lure. But one thing also in the summer was I did discover the Z-Man pop shads. That is the soft bait that Z-Man makes that you can Texas rig, and you can skip underneath the mangroves. So when you started seeing these reports coming out that, hey, the snook are underneath the mangroves, and you're seeing these people, catching all these fish, well, I felt left out because, you really can't skip a hard lure into the mangroves to expect to get it out. So I remember Tony actually did a report on this years ago, and he showed what it looked like working in the pool. And I bought some, and I rigged it on a owner twist lock, an unweighted one, and I was able to skip under the mangroves. And now I'm, just like the other guys, I've been able to catch the snooks, some nice trout, and juvenile tarpon. Absolutely love that lure for whatever reason. I got I shouldn't say all, most of my juvenile tarpon hookups were on that pop shads.
Cool.
Very cool. And did you try the bullfrog doing that? That's a maybe it's something about the soft plastics. I guess they skip well, but yeah, that's getting the topwater under those trees is so much fun. Did you try the bullfrog at that time, or did you try that a different season?
No, you know what? I didn't. I tried the bullfrog later in the fall, but I had a lot of times what had happened was I'd fallen onto a pattern, and like most fishermen, I was hanging on to what I should have been experimenting a little bit more. But you know how it is. You get on something that you figured out, you just want to stick with it.
Absolutely. And how about so you mentioned the noise trumps color. How about the size, like the 3.5 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch? What were you doing in that department?
Yeah, absolutely. In the springtime, the smaller baits with the quieter rattles worked. So just as these fish are emerging, the water's on a warming trend. The fish are getting more active. What I would throw is, the smaller, the SW08 the scare walk. It's got a quiet, like a one knocker type rattle in it. Or I would throw this other wooden lure made by High Roller. This is a wooden lure with no rattles in it. This did well on the big trout before. Here, I'll show it a little bit closer there. That did well on the big trout. Excuse me?
Looks like that'll cast a mile. It's back weighted, so it looks like that'll absolutely launch.
Yeah, without a doubt, that's the farthest casting lure I own. It literally is the shape of a casting plug. It goes forever. So I use the smaller profiles, those 3.5 inch. Some of these are even smaller than half of an ounce, like 3/8 of an ounce. As the summer moved in, then we started moving into the bigger baits. That's when the Spook Junior started working, and those 4 inch, those 3.5 to 4 inch sizes, because the bait fish is growing, and they're getting bigger. Now, when we move into the fall, when the bait fish are at the largest, you also need to move up into your bigger plugs. And again, I found that out kind of by accident too, where I'm plugging away with that Spook Junior because it's been doing so good for me for a number of months, and what I noticed was this is about the time, this was early fall. So we'll go into that. The fish are on the move. They're starting to school up a little bit, starting to group up a little bit. They're moving to these creek mouths, and I was starting to, I'm catching fish, but not really big ones. Well, I started rotating. I was doing the deal where I was doing the 3 spook juniors, different colors, and just seeing which color worked better. And I was getting kind of inconsistent results. So what I did was I did the spook junior, then I tied on a skitter V, a Rapala skitter V, and then a head and rattling spook. So those are 2 larger lures. And by chance, the larger lures were starting to work. It's kind of like the Slam Shady Obama, that started working better in the fall. Same thing with bigger topwaters. You get into those 3/4 ounce topwater lures. Those produced more and bigger fish, not just bigger fish, but you'd even get more. The fish were just clued in on those big baits.
What about, I know you, in this 4,000 word document, you talked about chuggers and poppers. I haven't heard you mention them too much yet. When did those come into play? When were they working?
Summertime. That was another lure that was working really good. When the fish would hide up in the mangroves during the day, they would come out, in the lower light areas to feed. And so in the mornings, they were working really good. Snook love that. They just love that sound. They can't resist it. So my favorite time to fish those was early morning before the shadows went away, along like a mangrove tree line or mangrove points or something that had an undercut bank on it, where the fish would just come out during the morning, but then they would hide back underneath during the day. Those work good. There's 2 different styles. So this is a storm chug bug. That's your standard chugger with a rattle in it. That worked really good when the wind was up and whenever it was overcast outside. Now, if it was sunny and bright and you were in the dog days of summer, this is another one that's made by High Roller. It's a wooden lure. Now, this one, it's kind of hard to tell. Maybe you can see there. It's not a full cup face. It's a half cup face. So this is more of a spitter. It doesn't chug. So what happens is when it's calm out, we know that the fish are just spookier. When there's no wind, they're in shallow water, they just get a tendency to be spookier. So you can't use something really loud or makes a lot of commotion. So that's when I like using this spitter type lure. It really you could work the lure closer to the fish without them getting spooked off. And that's when those really took off. To be honest with you, I didn't use them a whole lot because there wasn't too many days out there where it was calm in the summertime. We had a pretty windy summer, so I was sticking to more of the walkers and the rattling chug bug.
Yeah, and that chugger, I guess those 2 are probably really good for the mangroves as well because they're more of a slow retrieve, so that we can kind of keep it in the strike zone. Like when that strike zone is going to be, say, 3 feet away from the mangroves, you can have a little bit more time in that zone than like a walk the dog, which is going to kind of zip out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about topwater lures is one of the best things about them is they're a search bait. So a lot of times what you can do with them is, just be observant out there, pay attention to where you're getting your strikes from, even if the fish is following, where are they coming out from? And then you can start concentrating your cast and work in the areas that you're seeing the fish at. So if I'm seeing them tight to the mangroves, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get more parallel to the mangroves, and that way it'll keep your bait in the zone longer. If I'm seeing them, further out, say 10, 20 feet from the mangroves, I'm going to back off a little bit and cast at a 90-degree angle to them.
Yeah, and one question, since you mentioned it, this is on my list to ask you. So one of the coolest things with topwater is that, especially redfish, you see them wake behind the bait. Right, so you can actually see them before they strike, and sometimes they get up next to it, turn away. Sometimes they'll fall for 10 feet and turn away, and sometimes about 10 feet and then hit it. Did you find anything noticeable? I've been trying to figure out the best thing to do. Do you keep the same retrieve? Do you speed up, or do you slow down to get the follower to commit? What do you find any good findings there?
To be honest with you, I have the same frustrations. You'll run into the same things. And you know what? it's just as exciting to see that happen when that redfish comes up in your lure, behind the lure, as it is seeing that tailor pop up when you're sight casting, and you see that orange color and those blue fins. They're all excited, and they come right up to the lure and just take a 90-degree turn. And basically, what I think that's probably telling you is they like the action of the bait, but you need to get something that's further down. So moving forward, what I'll probably wind up doing is probably going to a subsurface twitch bait, like maybe a Marilure Catch 2000 or something like that, and get it down a little bit. And that'll probably entice it because it's got the same type of action, but it's further down. And sometimes that's all it takes to get them to bite. And again, that's a theory. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what I'll try. Now, the wake bait, that's a really good bait when that happens. A lot of times what will happen is they'll swipe at the lure and they're not really fully committing to it. But that wake bait, because it's down in the water column a little bit, it's all you need to get it to go. Also, another lure that would probably get in that situation is the Marilure 7M. This is a floater diver. And when you twitch that, do rapid twitch, like almost a walk the dog type of motion, it darts just underneath the water, just under the surface. And that would probably another one. If I was having followers on a walking type lure, I would probably try that because it's getting down.
Tony, have you tested out? I know you do a lot of topwater, at least seasonal, on the follower. Anything you found that get more commits than turns? It's always a heartbreaker when you see that fish turn off.
Yeah, the fish that I've had strike, I'll either keep the retrieve the same, not jerking it away too fast, not speeding it up, but keep it the same until you feel the weight of the fish, or I'll slow it down just slightly because sometimes they'll miss it and then they'll come back and hit it again. And if they go and hit it again, look for it and it's not there, they're just going to turn away. So they'll either lose track of it or, you just have to slow down your retrieve just slightly, but don't stop it completely. When you stop it completely, that's when those fish you're going to see them dart off the other way. So like, all right, that's not food if it's just going to sit there.
And for those who aren't totally committed to topwater, when you get that follower and it turns, get a paddle tail or something. Like Pat was saying, like a paddle tail, some open face jig head, they'll swipe at it more often than not because they're interested in eating. They just didn't want to go the extra effort or whatever. But I've had some where I speed up a little bit and they'll hit it, slow it down a little bit, and they hit it. But then just as many that don't, and it always drives me crazy. But as you said, Pat, it's just a thrill. Seeing that wake in itself.
Or if you're fishing with your brother, like Luke and I tend to do, and Luke is starting the morning off with topwater, start off with something like the Bomber and just be ready and literally watch. Because the second Luke misses a fish, guess who's casting right behind it? This guy. Great way to catch your buddy's fish that he or she missed. I'm curious, you basically fished, Pat, for an entire year, at least once a week, which is more than the average fisherman. And it sounds like hours every single time. What topwater caught either the most fish and or the biggest fish, the kind of your favorite trophy memory of the year? I'd love to hear kind of the one that was just the most consistent overall and the one that attracted the biggest fish.
Unsurprisingly, the most consistent lure for me and the one that caught the most fish was that Bone Spook Jr. that Luke loves so much. And I was trying to be a contrarian. I was trying to throw anything but that lure, but for some reason that lure just and that pattern has a sweet spot in the summertime for me. But my biggest fish came off of this lure right here. That is that Skitter V. That is the V10 size. Those consistently caught the biggest fish, and that was in the fall time. Really nice trout in the mid 20s. I would say that was probably my best big fish lure.
Yeah, Tony used that one a lot too, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say the one lure I've caught the biggest fish on so far has been the Super Spook Jr. Caught a 29-inch trout with that, and then the biggest fish I lost was on the Skitter V. It was a bull redfish. That's the first time I had a bull go after topwater, and it bent the back hook.
Oh, bummer.
One cool thing that I like about the Skitter V that I think works so well is I fish it a little bit untraditional. These are designed to be twitched and they'll have a long glide when they go back and forth. Well, I like it because it's got a flat side. And when you rip it really hard, when the water is, the waves are kicked up, it throws a lot of water because of that flat side. So you can actually draw the attention of those fish. And that's one of the things that really has worked well for me. Now, it is a single knocker lure, and in calmer conditions, you could probably do that glide. It'll work great, but it's a really good rough water lure too. I say rough water, inshore rough water. We'll give it that.
I know in the document you had mentioned that one of the best ideas is just to get out there and try in terms of what size. In what kind of retrieval. Did you find anything that was just best overall, or any aha moments about doing a pause for a second? Anything that was kind of an aha moment for you as you experimented for the year?
Yeah, actually, don't go out there with any preconceived notions on what's going to work and what's not going to work. You can have an idea, if this, then that. Okay, the conditions are this, so this should start working. But don't let the fish tell you what they want. Don't keep on sticking to your guns and say, no, you want this lure, and wind up losing a day of fishing. Keep changing things up. And I said in the document that if you're not catching any fish or getting any hits, change your cadence up, change your pauses up, change everything up, and then you're going to find something that works. And when that stops working, change again because they're wanting something else. Because throughout the day, the fish are going to their moods and their attitudes are going to change, so they're going to want something different. And that could be into changing a different type of topwater. Like I said, the noises, the sound of that rattle is really important. And if that wind starts kicking up, I will switch out to a noisier topwater. If it's flat calm, then I'm going to use something with a one knocker type rattle like that Spook Junior. Those seem to work better in calmer conditions.
So the question I had was going back to talking about the fish following the lure and not committing. And I want to test this out myself quite a bit. Have you tried any scent or anything like that with topwaters?
Yeah, I just started doing that probably a couple of months ago. Matter of fact, this rattling spook I got right here is covered in Procure, and I got it on my wife's desk, and she's probably not going to be happy. But yeah, I started trying that, and to be honest with you, here's the issue, Tony, and the situation in the waters that we're fishing. It's hard to see followers unless they're breaking the surface or they're waking, or if they're just under, because our water conditions aren't very good. So I really haven't got any really hard intel on that. But in my mind, I don't think it can hurt. I mean, I really don't, because I think some of those followers might come up to the bait and they might smell something or see something that they don't care for. And that Procure, if that masks an odor, then so be it.
Yeah, a lot of it's just masking. I didn't realize how good fish can smell, and like way better than dogs per the research. And like the human scent, like our natural human scent is a negative odor. And I think just if only the scent stuff, whether it's Procure or anything else, if only it just masks our own stuff, our own scent, which is bad, like that's a big deal. I'm not sure. I've tried it with topwater too, and I haven't noticed a difference, but again, it definitely can't hurt.
Yeah, just in theory, you would think, that topwater is moving forward, the fish is behind it, it's putting off scent that the fish is basically in the trail of. So if that is just something that'll make them commit to it, then I feel like that could definitely help.
Yeah, you can actually coat your topwater lure in Procure and just set it in the water, and you'll see an oil slick come off of that. So it's definitely leaving a trail.
Pat, wait till you see the stuff that we've been testing out, dude.
Yeah. We got some stuff that's potent. The only con is that when you put it on your wife's desk, it's gonna leave a mark on that.
It might be 3x Procure in terms of like pungent, won't come off. It is smelly. And it leaves. Remember, Luke, when we took it down to the Keys many months ago, and you remember the oil slick? It went on for like a mile.
Yeah, the more I've been testing out since, the more of a believer I'm becoming too. So today I went out, I was doing some tests, and soon as like I was doing a test on a live target shrimp lure and got broken off, so I had to do something else, and I put the scent on our shrimp on the power prawn, and total night and day difference. I was getting all sorts of strikes. So I'll need to try that on Topwater.
I know the goal wasn't to get all kinds of data in terms of like tides and moon phases and all that, but I've seen all your fishing reports inside the Insider Club, and they're pretty in depth. Did you have any aha moments there? Were there any certain tides or anything specific besides just, what you were trying to dial in with the actual lure and retrieval, and anything you can share there?
Yeah, when where I fish at, it's non-tidal. The current is really dictated by the wind. So what I did notice with the Topwater is it does work better when there's a little bit of water movement, whether it be wind driven. And during the summer, I really like a wind swept shoreline, meaning the wind was going parallel with the shore instead of directly against it. It seems like it created a false current, and the fish would stack up in there. And I found that pattern to be pretty solid throughout the summer. But yeah, as far as tidal and moon phases, to be honest with you, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that, just because of the fact that I only get to fish certain times. So whatever I'm dealt with is what I work with. So to be honest with you, the moon phases really, I don't like fishing the morning after a full moon. But if that's the day that I got handed to me, then that's what I'm going to do.
Cool. Smart.
And is there any one particular season that was noticeably better? Like obviously it's not going to be winter. So between spring, summer, fall, what would you say would be the time that if you're only going to do like Topwater for a season, what would be that season?
Historically, people say summertime, but I'll be honest with you, my spring was really good. I like the spring. I think it's because the bait fish were really condensed, and they were tightly packed, and that brought in all the predators. And once you find the bait fish, you found the predators. And in the summertime, what happens is they spread out more. They're not as tightly compacted. So you can catch a lot of fish in the summertime, but you have to work harder for them. In the springtime, there'd be days I wouldn't move from 100 yards and catch all the fish that I want. So for me this past year, I would say it was spring.
And I assume we didn't really talk too much about types of areas. You mentioned mangroves. I assume most of this was just on flats. You're not like fishing docks and stuff like that with the Topwaters. Any other tips on kind of best type of areas or depths that you were fishing?
Yeah. Now you can fish topwaters along docks and seawalls and those type of structures. Matter of fact, it's a topwater lure is no different than any other lure. The more type of structure you have, the better off you're going to be, and it's because the fish are there. So you can use a topwater to fish all these situations. But my favorite, and due to the area that I fish, because there's not a lot of development where I'm at, it is going to be seasonal. So in the springtime and the fall, I like fishing creek mouths because the bait fish and the fish are moving in and out of them. In the summertime, I'll fish mangrove tree lines that typically face the open area of the water. I think the fish will migrate out to those. And in the spring and the fall, when the weather's cooler, they'll be more towards the inside in the shallower water. But basically anywhere that you're going to throw, like a jerk shad type of lure, or like even your gulp shrimp or anything like that, you can catch fish on a top water. It might not necessarily be the best scenario, but it is the funnest bite. We all know that. But say in the summertime, an open flat, 3 to 4 feet with a lot of grass on it. Those are great areas to fish, and you can fish those even into the afternoon as long as you've got enough depth there. 8 to 10 feet in clear water. I was over in Sarasota this past summer, and we were fishing a grass flat it was probably about 8 feet deep. And at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was still catching trout on topwater.
Cool.
Would you agree that no matter what type of spot, whatever type of spot it is, there have to be bait fish up there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a given. Yeah. That's one of the things that I look for. I kind of taken this from your lessons that you teach. You really don't want to spend a lot of time in an area that you don't see any activity. So I'll do a lot like you, where I'll just keep paddling until I see something that looks, promising, and not just structure necessarily, but there's got to be some bait fish in the area, or at least 2 of the 3 Bs stacked up there, and then I'll start fishing.
Excellent advice. All right, hold on real quick. I got to call Carol. Please put in an order of some prop baits. Prop baits coming up. Prop baits. That's so cool.
It's funny about fishing the top water. You know how much stuff I've missed all year? Think about what you've released this year. The 2.0, the Leprechaun, the Bomber, haven't thrown any of those. So guess what I'm going to be ordering as soon as we're off the phone here.
Now we got the Power Prawn coming up that we've been testing now since, I don't know, May, June, whenever that was. Was it before? It must have been before that, right?
Yeah, it was midsummer. Yeah, and actually, that's what I was filming this morning. When I got broke off, I switched over and did. I was doing a lesson on how to retrieve the Power Prawn up on the flat, and I caught 4 trout over 20 inches during the lesson. Like, it was insane. They were stacked up in a hole, and it's that lure has been very impressive so far.
Great. So now we're going to sell out in one day, like we did the Bomber.
Yeah, we've already placed multiple rounds of orders now. But yeah, it's been fun. But yeah, this Topwater is, of all lures, Topwater's, I think, the ultimate, because you see it, you experience it. Even if you're not catching anything, like, it's just cool to see that bait go on the surface, and you just never know when a giant fish is going to come smack it. When I was bass fishing, that was my favorite, and inshore saltwater, it's just awesome. So I'm very impressed that you did the whole year.
Yes,
to me, that's just awesome. And the fact that you started in December or January, I think, right? And you stuck it out.
Yeah, January.
You started the worst month possible, probably. But yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
I did this before years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago. I went to one of those seminars that Bass Pro Shops put on. They bring these Bass Pros come in. And I remember one of the things that one of the Bass Pros said, that he actually said that if you want to learn how to fish a lure, fish only that lure for the entire year. And that way you'll run across every type of weather condition, fish migrations, trend, or whatever that might be. And you'll get really, really good at it. Well, I took that to heart. And the first thing I did was, I'm going to fish nothing but soft plastics. So I fished nothing but soft plastics for a year. I got, pretty good at it. And then the next time I tried it, I did nothing but spinnerbaits. So fished nothing but spinnerbaits for a whole year. So I got pretty good with throwing spinnerbaits. And then the next thing I was going to try was crankbaits. I was going to throw nothing but crankbaits for the whole year. But the problem was I was so proficient, or what I felt was proficient, with the soft plastics and the spinnerbaits, that I never moved to the crankbaits because I wasn't catching fish on them. So I went back to it. So that was the last time I tried that. But had I done this all over again, I think I probably would have listened to my true needs. My want was to get better at topwater, but my true needs was to get better at hard baits in general. So I probably would have said, hey, I'm going to fish nothing but hard baits this year. And it would have extended my fish catching abilities and the learning curve and all that. Because as soon as the topwater bite was off, I could have switched to a subsurface and then still kept on going. But, there was many a days that I'm loading up the kayak at 9:30 in the morning because, it's done.
I bet. So now that you're going to not force yourself to do topwater, I assume you're not going to take that huge case of topwater. So what are going to be are you going to take 3 topwaters out, like on a normal trip? When you're doing other stuff, you're going to take, I guess if you're going to take 3 or 5, like what are those going to be? What are the must-haves that are going to be in your tackle box based on what you found? Super Spook Junior, the chugger?
Yeah, it's going to be seasonal. So in the springtime, I'm going to take the small skitter walk, the SW08, and the pearl color, the white. I'm going to take the prop bait, and then I'll probably take maybe a mirror mullet, which is mirror lure surface walker. It's got a quiet rattle in it. Those are the 3 I would take. Moving to the summer, definitely the Spook Junior. I'm going to use a sheep pup on windy days, and then probably that chugger also. That's the chug bug. a wake bait too. Got to put that in there. And then come fall, I'm going to be switching those bigger ones. The head and rattling spook. That's a 3/4 ounce, almost 5-inch long lure. I'm going to take that, and then also that Skitter V. Now, one thing to add on this 3/4 inch lure that we didn't hit on before is this takes a heavier rod to work. The bigger the lure that you're using, the heavier the equipment that you have to use. You want to keep the lure in that sweet spot of the rod range, somewhere in that. If it's a 1/4 to 3 ounce rated rod, that 1/2 ounce lure is perfect for. But if you try to work a 3/4 ounce lure, you're not going to be able to get the action out of it that you should. I've got a bait casting rod that's kind of like a medium heavy plus. It goes all the way up to a 1 ounce lure, and it really does well with those bigger topwater lures. Now, because of that one, it's got a lot of backbone. I actually spool that one with mono because the mono has a little bit of give to it, and it keeps the fish buttoned a little bit better. I was losing fish left and right when I was using braid, but when I switched to mono, it's a low stretch mono. But it did much better than the braid. The braid would just pull the hooks on that heavy rod.
And on that big topwater, is it designed to have 3 hooks on it, or was it just the 2? Because I'm wondering if you replaced.
No.
Good.
No, this is the biggest one that I saw that it only requires 2. There's no center. Any bigger than that, and actually some of them that size does require 3. On the 3, what I've done, I've only got a couple of lures and I haven't used them that much. I will remove the center hook and just use the ends. Like this is the 7M. This is my go-to on one of those dog day afternoons. This is a great bait. It's a floater diver. So I put 2 end lines on it. This is what it looks like from the factory. It's got triple trebles. So what I do is I'll remove that center hook, and then I'll put a 1/0 in the front, a 2/0 in the rear. And what's cool about that is when you do this, not only does it have a darting action, when you're winding this lure in, it has a nice little wiggle under the water, and it's great for trolling from spot to spot. That's saved my skunk many times.
Trolling the topwater.
Yeah, to me, it just looks so much safer on the inline, 2 inlines, like 3 trebles all packed there together. That just looks like a getting hooked waiting to happen.
I've never had one in the face or any of the, knock on wood, that you've seen, but tons in the hands, and shirts ripped apart, and just treble hooks.
I mean, think about it, 3 trebles, you got 9 points to stick you. That's no, and especially close quarters in a kayak, and you got a trout flopping around. Yeah, just waiting. This disaster waiting to happen.
9 points on a 4-inch plug. That's not a good ratio.
Right.
Carpet in my office looks like a cat went to town. Drop those things on the carpet, you're never getting them out.
No, cutting them out. Cool. Well, Pat, I see the time we've gone a little bit over, but this was awesome. I think we could probably go another hour on this. And we'll have to have you back on for your next wild experiment. And for those of you who are not insider members, we'll have some of the notes in the show notes at saltstrong.com/podcast. And then if you insider members, I think what's been really neat is just following along. Of course, you can click Pat Ogletree's member profile, and you could see everything. I remember a few times, you always did a great report every week, but you would also ask questions a couple of days before. Hey guys, I'm going out today, and I'm going to use these 3 colors, white, black, and some, fuchsia color. Which one do you think is going to work best? And everyone was kind of chiming in, and then you would report back on what happened. I love kind of watching the progression of all that. So for you insider members, you can follow along, and just thank you in general for all the support. We talked about it on a prior podcast, just how blessed we are to have such amazing members in our Insider Club, not just as people, but just how helpful you guys are. I mean, just so positive, and all the tips you're leaving, like we're personally reading this stuff as well. And like, I got a whole page of notes here I'm jotting down, and like, oh my gosh, like this is good stuff. So we absolutely love it, and certainly blessed to have you take some time out of your day to do this. This has been great.
Well, thanks for having me. And what you guys have built and what you've done is there's nothing like it out there. And the positivity that's out there, the spreading of knowledge is great. It's what makes us all better. But the absolute positivity that's in this group is you don't see this on the internet anywhere. I mean, any other fishing forum or site, you could post a question on there, and within 2 comments, it's gotten ugly, it's gotten negative, but there's none of that in the Salt Strong community. It's a great place to be, and I love it there. And thank you for doing what you did out there. And Tony too, all those lessons that you put out there. I can tell you right now, I absolutely would not be where I'm at right now in my ability to fish. Not saying I'm great or anything like that. I've got a long way to go, but I'm miles ahead where I would have been without you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. We all have a long way to go. Like there's the cool thing about, especially saltwater fishing, it's literally impossible to know it all. And no matter how much I try, I learn an absolute ton every day. And this podcast in particular, I learned an absolute. I now have 4 different lures that I've wrote down that I need to go buy. So you've hurt my wallet a little bit, but I can't wait. I can't wait to try out new lures and some new techniques.
Yep, it was fun. Well, anyone that has any questions, if you're an insider, go in there into the insider community, ask away. We'll put a link to this podcast there in some of the show notes. And of course, the show notes, as always, will be at saltstrong.com/podcast. And if you guys have any specific questions for Pat or anything that we left out, or any specific questions about a lure that he might have used or why he didn't use or like a certain one, let us know. We'll forward all that on to him. He's great about checking all these questions. So otherwise, what a fun one. And of course, if you're not a member, go join us at saltstrong.com as well. But that was really, really fun. We're going to do more of these. We had such great feedback having Bill on, and we've just got so many really amazing anglers who, as to your point, are always just trying to get better and always just trying to learn and always experimenting. And we love this stuff. Like, so I was getting giddy when I saw you sent me a Word document, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing keeps going on and on and on. That is so cool. So much knowledge. So guys, we appreciate you, Pat. We appreciate you. Luke and Tony, see you guys in the next episode.
Sounds good. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Adios. See you guys.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was passed down to me from the days of old. To find us on the water if there was a way. It's been said my papa, he wrote the book on catching big reds and 20-pound snook. I wish I knew all the things he knew today. For he's the reason why we are this way. And he put fish in our soul.